How you doing? Steve Downs. Once again, it's Ask Me Anything, our next segment in a series where you have sent in some questions and are able to ask me anything. Let's get to some questions about radio, my radio career. I was a disc jockey for about 44 years, beginning in Dayton, Ohio, at the college station there at the University of Dayton. Then I moved on to a little town in southeast Ohio, Athens, Ohio, where our slogan was, "We're the only radio station in town," which we were. So it was a captive audience. Moved on to Pittsburgh at a great progressive rock freeform station there called WYDD. From there to Los Angeles, and was happy to work at a legendary rock station there, KLOS, for most of the 80s and into the 90s a little bit. Was down in Tampa, Florida at YNF for a while, and then back to Los Angeles for a brief period of time, Santa Barbara, and then finally coming to Chicago in 1997 to work first at the Loop and then at the Drive, where I finished my career in 2015, I believe it was. It was a great run, and I was fortunate to work with a lot of really special people and a great time, I think, in radio. Game Hobbie wants to know what were some of my favorite things about working in radio. What attracted me to radio was music, and I mentioned this in the last segment when we were doing the personal stuff. You know, I love rock and roll. What can I say? And when I was in college, I was playing in a band. I was a drummer in the band, and it got to the point where we needed to either make a decision about, you know, dropping out of school and you know, taking this seriously or not. And fortunately for me, in a rare moment of clarity, I decided that maybe being a drummer in a rock band did not have the greatest future for me. So, but I wanted to do something that kept me close to the music, because that was my passion. And the radio thing seemed like an avenue, because I really thought of myself more as a record producer. That's where I sort of thought I would be going. And I thought, you know, back in those days, there was no such thing as taking a course in that in college. You know, the only course really was going to a recording studio, grabbing a broom and sweeping the floor, and that's how you got into the, you know, record producing business. So I thought getting into radio and being a disc jockey. Well, once I got on the air, of course, the ham in me took over, and I just loved the whole you know, some of my early heroes in radio were the, you know, FM DJs of the era. A guy by the name of Jimmy Roach in Columbus, Ohio, WCOL-FM, and then, you know, the legendaries at WNEW in New York and KSAN in San Francisco. These, you know, I just got caught up in all of that. WEBN in Cincinnati was another great one. Jelly Pudding. But so I got in and just never got out. I really had no intention of making that my career, but once I got started, I just enjoyed it so much and stayed with it, and it worked out pretty well. As you could tell from the litany of stations and cities that I worked in, you know, the radio business was a bit of a gypsy life. It's very different now, and in my opinion, not nearly as rewarding and creative and fun as it used to be. But back in those days, my friends, it was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed it tremendously. But it was the music that got me you know, got me hooked there. So Game Hobbie, thanks for that question. From Mick 3Y. What made you take the jump from being a radio personality to being involved in voice acting for video games and TV shows? It would be really interesting to hear your thoughts on how different or even how similar the two worlds can be. Well, there are obvious similarities. You know, you're talking into a microphone. But there's a lot of differences, and what's fascinating is to the average person, you would think you know, the two are very complementary, but they aren't necessarily. Radio is it's a different form of creative expression than voice acting is. And interestingly, the two rarely crossed for me, with the one notable exception of getting the gig for Master Chief in Halo, where my radio career did have a role in that. Beyond that, it rarely happened. If I could tell you how many times as a voice actor I would audition for a role and the description of the role was FM DJ, which I was. It's like, auditioning for a role and saying we want somebody, kind of like Steve Downes. You would think you'd get that gig, right? I never did. Never booked one of those roles ever. I've retired from full-time radio. I still do a syndicated radio show that some of you may hear in various parts of the country. It's called The Classics. It runs 2 hours once a week, usually on the weekends. It depends on the radio station, so check your local listings and see if you can catch that. That's still a lot. I do enjoy doing The Classics. It's still a lot of fun. So, Mickey, thanks for those questions. That was great. We have a question from Dektwa, I believe that is, about voice acting. Starting off as a new voice actor, what would you recommend? And also, we got a similar question from Dimitri Patrinik, I believe that is. What I would recommend is, first of all, go into it with eyes wide open. Two things about voice acting, and I think it might apply to acting in general. It's really not a part-time gig, and the chances of financial success are very slim. And you have to go into it, with those expectations. It can be extremely rewarding. One of the things I most love about voice acting is that every gig is different. So you're constantly, sort of fine-tuning your craft to suit the various, gigs you may come across. So I find that very, very rewarding. But it's not an easy profession to get into, and probably harder now than it ever was. But having said that, if you live in a city, usually a bigger city, and especially a LA or a New York or even Chicago, who has some voice acting workshops that you can find your way into, that's one start. You have to be careful though, because a lot of them are rip-offs and not worth your time, and certainly not worth your money. But if you can find good ones, and LA used to have a lot of good ones. I haven't lived there in quite a long time, but there used to be some great ones. Another good source is improv classes. Now you think, why? I'm not talking about stage acting or even being on camera, but voice acting and voiceover gigs really require you to be able to find your voice and your character quickly. Oftentimes when you go into an audition, you're handed a script and you have maybe 5 minutes to get ready for it, and you've never seen it before in your life. So you need to be able to find who the character is that you're trying to do, whether it's in a video game or it's, selling cars. It doesn't matter. You need to find a voice, and you need to find it quickly. And taking improv work is a really good way to kind of work that muscle in your brain. And then also just the idea of just listening to commercials. Don't skip past the commercials on your DVR. Watch them and listen to them and imitate them. Eventually you'll need to find your own voice, but the best way to start that is, imitate somebody who you like and admire or impress with. And then slowly but surely you'll find your own voice and be able to proceed from there. So if it's video games, or if it's commercial work or narration, documentaries, fine-tune that ear to listen to that voice and find what it is that draws you in, because there's good voice actors. It's like everything else. There's good voice actors and there's bad ones or mediocre ones. What makes the good ones good? And the thing that makes the good ones good, and it's the same for on camera or any other kind of talent really, is that it draws you, the viewer or the listener, in and makes you want to listen or watch and be involved. And so how do you do that? Well, you create a voice and a character that's believable and interesting. So improv work, any of that kind of, acting work is all good training for you for a voice acting career. So that would be my recommendation there. Dektwa and Dimitri. So those are just some questions that we had that regards to voiceover and my radio career. So thanks for that. I hope you enjoy this series. Our next one will be about Halo and about questions that you submitted for Ask Me Anything about Halo and Master Chief and my experience in that. So we'll do that next time. I hope you've enjoyed this segment, and I hope you'll come back for the next one. Thanks a lot. Chief, out.